Hey everyone, welcome to episode 8 of iSampleU. Thank you to everyone that's been following along with this series. It's been a lot of fun to make, and I hope you guys have been enjoying it. If you haven't watched episodes 1 through 7, I really recommend you guys go check them out. I've gotten a lot of really awesome audio submissions, and this project's been a lot of fun to do. So for this episode, I was talking to one of my buddies, Jack Straton, who suggested I do a beat with some sounds from Mario Kart Double Dash. So if you stick around, you'll be able to hear how I turn this
Let's go! Nintendo!
into this. So if you want to skip right ahead to the beat, there's a timestamp in the description. You can just click on that and it'll take you right to the beat. But if you want to find out how I turn that sample into this beat, I'm going to jump right in. So the first thing I did is I took this sound from the sample, and since there was a strong T sound, I was thinking I could maybe make a snare out of that. So I put that in the quick sampler, and before any real processing, this is what it sounds like. So I put on the FabFilter Pro Q3 with a huge boost around 258 Hz and ducked the rest of it so that I would just get this one strong frequency that's the body of this snare sound. And then I boosted again around 3000 Hz so you get that crisp, crackly sound of a snare. Then I compressed it with the CLA 76 compressor with a fast release. Put on Wave's Smack Attack to give it a whole bunch more attack and take away all the sustain. Put on the Wave's Torque plugin to lower the pitch of it. The T-Rex Classic Clipper to give it some soft saturation. And the L1 limiter to bring up the volume and chop those top peaks off. And then I just played it a little bit higher on the keyboard, and it sounded like this. The next thing I wanted to do was make some kind of synth sound out of the sample. I took this sound right here from the original track.
No!
I put that into the quick sampler and just took a little bit of it that I could play. Put on my classic NLS channel, brought down the gain, brought on the FabFilter Pro Q3 to give it a boost around 230 Hz, a boost around 980 Hz, and cut this weird sharp frequency I was getting around 5000 Hz. Then I compressed it with the RVox compressor from Waves, did some sidechain compression using the C1 compressor from Waves, brought back the high mids and the high end using the Vitamin plugin from Waves, and then added a little bit of saturation with the FabFilter Saturn plugin. And then I sent it out to a bus with a microshifter on it from Sound Toys, and another bus with FabFilter's Pro R reverb with a pretty spacious chapel reverb. And then after playing a little pattern on the keyboard, it sounded like this. Then I wanted to make some kind of complementary synth sound to the first one. So I took this part from the original sample. So I put that in the quick sampler, did my NLS channel, brought down the gain, used the FabFilter Pro Q3 to duck a lot of these frequencies and just leave it a little bit of space around 9000 Hz. Compress it with the RVox, sent it to the Waves Guitar Amp plugin with this direct warm preset on. I used a pretty strong de-esser to cut a lot of this harshness around 4000 Hz. Sidechain compressed it with the C1 compressor and put the microshifter on it just to give it a little bit more stereo wideness. And then I played a little pattern on the keyboard and it sounds like this. So next I wanted to make some kind of percussion sound out of the sample, so I took this part. So where Mario kind of draws out that s on the take these. I put that into the quick sampler, cut out just the S sound at the end of that, used my NLS channel, brought down the gain, used my FabFilter Pro Q3 again to cut a lot of the low end, everywhere below 1075 Hz. Did some compression with the CLA 76 with a fast release, and it really cranked the input on this one. Used the Waves de-esser around 9300 Hz and a pretty strong threshold. And then I used the Waves doubler to give it a little bit more stereo wideness. And I find that this doubler just sounds a little bit different than the Sound Toys microshifter, so I try and use them depending on the instrument. So before processing, it sounds like this. And then with everything on it, it sounds like this. Next, I wanted to make some kind of bass sound out of the sample. So this is definitely the most challenging thing I had to do. So I went to the original sample and I took this part. So if you hadn't guessed it, I put that into the quick sampler. I just took a little piece of it and looped it with 8 times speed so that you wouldn't even be able to tell that it was looping. Again, I started with the NLS channel, brought down the gain, used the FabFilter Pro Q3 to duck a lot of the top end. Pretty much everything above 400 Hz I rolled off. I used the Logic built-in pitch corrector just so I could play the specific notes that I wanted because the original sample was a little bit out of key Put on the Soundtoys Decapitator to give it some overdrive. Put on another EQ to duck out this weird harsh frequency. Boost around 150 Hz, duck around 60 Hz, and roll off everything below 42 Hz. That just sounded super muddy. Put on the CLA bass to give it a little bit of a boost with the bass. Give it some honk in the treble. Added a little bit of the wall style compression. Put on a little bit extra sub and a little bit of extra wideness, like a chorus mode. Use the C4 multiband compressor to really compress the low end and the extra high end. Put on the R bass at 256 Hz and at 53 Hz. Then brought up the volume and chopped the extra peaks to give it a little bit more consistency with the L1 limiter. Use the T-Rex Classic Clipper to give it a little bit more perceived volume. Use the Waves Bass Rider to keep the volume even more consistent. And then I used the C1 compressor to sidechain it with the kick drum. And I know that sounds like a lot, and believe me, it was. So before anything, this is what that sounded like. But after everything I put on, it sounds like this. Next up, I just chopped this one part of the sample to use as another top percussion type thing. So I just put it in the quick sampler, used the NLS channel, brought down the gain, used the CLA 3A compressor from Waves with pretty heavy peak reduction, and the Cable Guy's Pancake just to give it this oscillating stereo effect. So that sounds like this. Next, I wanted to make one final synth lead. So I used the same sound that I used for this earlier. I put it back into the quick sampler, used the FabFilter Pro Q3 to give it a big boost around 500 Hz and cut everything else. Compressed it with the RVox. Put it through the guitar amp with the iScream preset, which is a pretty heavy distortion preset. Sidechain compressed it with the C1 compressor and put on the CLA guitar plugin to give it a little less bite in the treble, a little more compression, a tiny bit of reverb, and a little bit of pitch widening. So before the plugins, it sounds like this. And after everything's on it, it sounds like this. And the only thing that wasn't from the sample for this beat was the kick, which came from the Cymatics Eternity collection. But that's pretty much it for this beat. So without further ado, here's the beat for episode 8 of iSampleU. Enjoy. Well, that's all for this week. Thank you guys for tuning in to episode 8 of iSampleU. Please like this video and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this. And feel free to leave a comment if there's anything you guys want to see, hear, or know about in the next episode. If you'd like to submit something for this series, you can email me at productionbydino@gmail.com. Give me a follow on Instagram at dean.thebean. And until next time, this has been iSampleU with me, Dean, aka Dino Beats, and I'll catch you guys on the flip-flop.